Deepside Freedive chats. We should probably look.
Can you still hear what I'm having to say?
I know, people are going to think you're demonstrating a freediving technique. But
Welcome to session 0 of Deepside Freedive Chats. Here's your host.
I think you should start because this was your idea, right?
No, the last one was my idea. No, I just came for the foot. No, about yeah.
Yeah, like how? Because I mean, I was even asking Ben like before, like how do you know? Inosia, Sam, and Wendy. Like how did this group come to be together?
Because Ben is awesome. Dave put together Washington Freediver group get together out on the peninsula, or no, it was all on the Strait of San Juan technically. Right?
Dave Farkushi put that together at Saltwater.
Yeah, it's Salt Creek.
Salt Creek,
yeah.
Salt Creek, yeah.
And
yeah.
I'm like, if I'm gonna drive that far, past my clamming grounds, I'm gonna want to stop and do some clamming. But the main clamming grounds were closed, so we found a random one. Ron came out on that one, and I put it on the Facebook group. Was like, hey, we're gonna stop by here, do some clamming before we meet up with everyone else. It was welcome to join us. And Ben showed up. Ben was like, hey, yeah, we're clamming. I was like, yeah, we're clamming. He's a shovel, bud. We did clamming, we did diving, and then we all cooked. We were actually hanging out at your campground, right?
That was my campground,
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. We had lunch there, and I was like, Ben's cool as hang. Like, that's the part I love about spearfishing is go out, gather food, and share with people. And Ben came, joined on that. I was like, I like Ben. Ben's cool.
And that pasta you made out of those clams we caught, that was delicious.
Yeah, it's unfair because everyone has an expectation for my standard of cooking now based off of that one dish. So I'm inconsistent. So other get-togethers, like kids are coming up to me, my mom and dad said you make a really good pasta. I didn't get the same reaction after the pasta that day, so lets me know they were disappointed. So yeah, shot myself in the foot on that one.
Yeah.
That was a really cool day because that's actually the first time I really had like a mussel pasta or a clam pasta like that. And it's also the first time that I had uni or kelp as well because Dave had been harvesting that as well during that trip.
And we had squid inside the pasta too.
Yeah.
Wendy's like, we should bring squid. She cleaned it, made it into the pasta. I mean, like more seafood in pasta just makes pasta better.
Mm-hmm.
But like the idea of that weekend and then like subsequent was to build more community amongst freedivers and spearos and everyone in Washington. And then that's like a tradition that we've like carried on. So then Ben's like come to more weekends and like organizes line dives and like it's been, and then Jana's been on Facebook. I see your posts. So like I think it is like my idea about this is that it's like an attempt to gather more like community, especially in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, I completely agree. That was a lot of the impetus behind it. One, so my dive partners could make more dive partners. Just because we're at different skill levels, so like they may be excited to go do something that I'm like I don't want to do that anymore. So they have the opportunity to dive with other people and still enjoy that because I'm the jaded old man on the side, so I want to still go out and enjoy that. And it's been great. I think Nick and Sam went. You guys dove with the Port Townsend crew. You guys went out that day and same thing. I was like, nah, I'm lazy. I don't want to go out. You guys went out. You guys had a great time. That's awesome. And it feeds into the safety aspect of it as well, because I'm the person in the group who has the don't do that stories. And it wasn't until later in life where...
You're not the only person with those. I guarantee everyone here has those don't do that.
Yeah.
Like maybe not everyone is disclosing about that, but of course everyone has those experiences.
But it wasn't until later in the dive career that like on reflection that I realized what it was I loved about diving and spearfishing so much. I was like, it's actually a community that makes it that much better, and then safer as well. So you get a comfortable, safe dive, you get the great company after, and everybody wins.
Yeah, I haven't really met any water people I don't get along with. Yeah. Whether it's spearfishing, freediving, swimming, it's like they're all great people. At least to me, they're great people.
Yeah.
And you've dove all over the world, right? And you're kind of worldwide travels. 'Cause where did you get certified? And then did you get to dive in a lot of other countries after? Or because you did like a round the world trip,
I kind of wish I could say I was like a world traveler, but I only was able to do it once. But it was, I did hit a lot of spots while I was able to do that. Because I got certified on Koh Tao in Thailand, which is like a real great mecca for mostly scuba diving. You can't throw a rock without hitting a scuba shot.
Who was your freedive instructor?
Florian, actually.
Really?
He was the one that ran the head of it.
Maybe you should say who Florian's last name is. Or maybe his title.
Yeah, the longest.
The 10-minute man.
10-minute man.
The 10-minute man.
12 minutes unofficially.
Yeah, it doesn't. Well, yeah. I mean, you're talking to somebody that doesn't count what your personal best is in
training.
training.
Or is he breathing pure O2?
No, just without regular
wow.
static. Just regular static.
Wow.
Yeah, it was one of his students that led the class I was in, but he was there kind of like running the shop, and he would have lunch with us. So it was funny because I was completely new to freediving. I had no idea who this guy was until like 6 months after I took that class. And then I saw something else. I was like, wait, that was him? So, yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah, he definitely makes static look interesting. I took like some of the Molchanov's courses that they have on, they have 3 minute, 4 minute, 5 minute static, and he's just, talking, okay, now we're going to do this breath hold, and you just watch him hold his breath. Static's not something that is necessarily exciting or interesting to watch. It gets really interesting, I'd say, in like the last quarter, because it seems so amazing, but it's one of the hardest things, I think, to safety, because it's a long time and there's really not a whole lot happening. Yeah. It can be minutes before there's anything. It's like, oh, there's a contraction. Okay, we're 6 minutes in. How many more minutes is it gonna go? But it could change. But I find it's the hardest thing to safety.
I can imagine safetying him because I know how long it feels just when people are doing 3 or 4 minute holds.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny too, because like people will come up to me and want to talk, I find, when I'm training in the pool. And when I'm diving, I'm just in my zone. But when I'm coaching, like I'm coaching, I'm walking around with somebody, I'm doing timing, and they're asking questions, and I think that I appear as not very friendly because I'm in the middle of a training session, and that timing is really important. But people, I think, are definitely more curious about freediving and what's happening. I mean, when I started, people were like, oh, so you like jump off cliffs and what do? You're like a skydiver? They didn't have any idea what freediving was. So now I think a lot more people know what freediving is, but usually what I hear now is like, oh, I watched that show on Netflix. Oh. And I don't think that they're really depicting what freediving is. And even in the early days, for me, it was like, oh, freediving's this extreme sport, from scuba diving. It's, oh, those freedivers are so risky. Like, they're going out in the middle of the ocean and they're taking all these risks. But it's actually not that at all. Like, it's very iterative. It's very calculated. And, to get to those depths, those distance in time, you really have to know your body. You have to have great buddies. You have to be in a really safe environment. And that is all fostered and grown, obviously through community. And
I've been accused of being an adrenaline junkie for trying to do freediving before. And if you know anything about it, it's the exact opposite of what it's about. So.
Yeah, because you really, like, we're lazy. People will think, oh, you're a freediver, you must be a great swimmer. It's like, no, I'm just maximum amount of efficiency, minimum amount of effort.
I was going to say, living in Hawaii, diving every weekend. But I've only ever been in water maybe about 3-4 times a year without a wetsuit and fins. Just like, it's all gear.
Well, so freedivers get into it because they're lazy, and then cold water freedivers are the laziest of them all, because then you don't even have to work out. You just lay in the water and you start shivering, and that just burns all the calories for you. You don't have to do anything.
I have to slightly disagree about the cold water freediver stuff because my preference is certainly diving in warm water, but I live here. So this is, if I don't want it to be a recreational travel hobby, then this is where I get to dive. But if I can choose being in warm water over cold water, I will take warm water any day, with the exception that cold water life is really magical to see. So those like kelp forests and just different animals, so it can be really vibrant. And when you get a cold water experience where you have 15 meters visibility in cold water, it's like the most phenomenal thing you've ever seen, right?
Too bad you have to do that in the middle of winter to get those.
That's right. So you gotta tough it out.
It's not easy.
And the tricks, you know, warm water in your gloves and socks and all those
that
things.
Is unless during wintertime you fly somewhere else to dive. Now we're from our sponsor, Alaska Airlines.
The funny thing, like, I know a lot of freedive instructors, and they do vacations, and people are like, oh, why don't you like lead vacations? Because like when I'm on vacation, I want to be on vacation.
Yeah.
I want to be able to sleep in. I feel like Ben would be a really good vacation organizer, because you just seem like you have a get up and go attitude all the time.
I don't get out of bed before 11 on days off.
Okay, sweet. It's good to know that you do have like an off switch, because when I first met you, you guys would stay out in the water for hours. We would be done a dive session, and then you and Walt would just swim off. We're gonna go see if we can drop a line over here. So we've already been diving for 2 hours, and you just book it out into the middle of the lake, dropping the line, pulling it up. I'm seeing fins everywhere, and I'm like out of my wetsuit. I've walked my dog. She's had a swim. I come back. You guys are still not back.
That was my first impression of Ben and Walt. Then was like, wow, they're very passionate about this. They love this. Because initially, on the Facebook group, all I see is videos. Oh, just post some videos. I met them for no, they love this. They love this. I was in awe of it.
It's the fun, I think, it's an experiment, right? Like, you get a new piece of gear, and then you play with that. And I think, Ben and Walt, they definitely post videos of that stuff, and they're very transparent. I post a little more videos now because I teach, and so you have to have visibility. But the self-promotion, it's the worst feeling in the world for me. I don't like it at all. I would just prefer to show up and teach a course and not have to deal with any of the other things, but it's the way of the world now.
For me, it always feels counterintuitive to freediving, because that's about kind of calming and not definitely for me messing with technology or trying to record something. It's gonna take me out of a moment instead of put me into it. But yeah,
I taught a bunch of beginner courses last year, and I found that I had the same questions about gear, which is why I put out that Gear 101 series for people, because they'll go buy gear and they'll buy the wrong gear, and they spend $500 to $800. They got a big scuba mask, and they've got short fins or split fins, and they just got the wrong stuff. And mostly it's the weight belt that just drive me nuts. They would get 25 pounds of weight on a nylon weight belt, and then pool time is so expensive to rent, and so I would make the mistake thinking, okay, 15 minutes is definitely enough time for students to get in their wetsuits, but then they would not have any of their gear assembled, and so maybe we have a 2-hour slot, for this particular discipline, and
first 45 minutes.
They spend, 30 minutes before they're getting in the water. Oh man, so I want people to use that time more effectively, which is why I put that out there, and that if other people watch it and it's useful, that's great.
So real quick, breaking fourth wall. So a lesson from that one there, if you were watching this video, you're already ahead of the curve. You're doing your research, but that's how you should buy gear. Don't go to the scuba shop and ask them what to buy. I'm not saying don't go to the scuba shop and buy anything. I'm saying just know what you want to buy. I do think it's actually important to help give business to your local dive shop, because that's who's going to get you or keep in stock the things you may need. But definitely do your research in regards to what gear you need for yourself, depending on what level you're at, what you're aiming to get to, your environment and everything. How long have you been diving in the Pacific Northwest? That way people who are looking for your channel gear-wise know for sure that, like, hey, I'm diving this environment, this person is diving this environment for this long. Like, this is some great information.
Yeah, so my YouTube channel is at Jana Strain.
At Jana Strain.
As is my Instagram, and my Facebook page is Jana Strain Freediving. So I moved to the Pacific Northwest, and originally I was doing diving in coldwater lakes, so training up in Comox Lake, which is this beautiful deep lake. And early in my dive career, I was safetying people that were doing 100-meter dives. It was just the two of us diving. And so that was like something that I would say is not smart, and I wouldn't do now. I wouldn't safety a person diving to 100 meters, me as the only safety on a float. That is not something I would do today. So that would have been back in 2009. So that was summertime, lake diving, and then I was doing a lot more surfing for kind of a block there in the middle, and I didn't really love the 7mm wetsuits. I had gotten, I can't remember the name of the suit, but with neoprene, like the thicker suits, a flexible neoprene is nice and comfortable, or more comfortable, but a stiffer neoprene lasts longer, it keeps you warmer longer, so it's a real trade-off. Do you want your suit to last, better value for the money, or do you want to feel mildly like you're choking as you're breathing up? So I really started getting into the open water on a regular basis for freediving in 2020, when the whole world shut down and there was nothing else that could be done. I had all the gear, and so I started going back out and diving in the open water, and then getting used to the cold, and just kind of fell in love with it.
Earlier I said cold water divers are lazy, but I do want to add some extra caveats onto that. Is that the cold water has extra dangers that you really have to be careful of when you're diving in. Because even before you start shivering, a lot of tension is added to you as your body tries to like resist, like try to warm you up. It's like your muscles will start shaking a little bit, and sometimes it's not even noticeable before you start shivering. And any tension that's added like during like your free dives will increase your risk of having like a barotrauma, like a lung squeeze or something during your dive. And so it's really essential that you do your dives in like a relaxed way and progress very incrementally in cold water. Like earlier I was saying I learned in Thailand, and then I kind of like hopped from like Thailand to Bali to Croatia, then to Seattle. And I quickly jumped up to like over 30 meters of diving, like very quickly, like in the beginning of my diving career. But then as soon as I got back to Seattle, and the water temperatures went from like 75 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, I went from like 32 meter dives to about 15 meter dives.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I had to just kind of like restart from there and just keep going up like a couple meters or even 1 meter at a time before I got back to like my old records again.
Why did you only get to 15? Why did you stop at 15 when you had come back in?
A lot of it was anxiety, I think. Just being in a very different water, because it's much darker here too. And like when you're diving in tropical water, usually the visibility is like 20 meters or something. And so like my first few dives back here, it was, in addition to the temperature, having your visibility reduced to about like 3 or 4 meters was another shock. And then it's like, you get down there and it's like pitch black, and you're like, oh, Oh fuck! Oh, I can't. It's past 30 seconds. I can cuss now.
Did you have the plate set to 15, or did you have the plate set deeper and then you turned early?
This was the beginning of my freediving gear. We didn't even really have a plate. We had a tennis ball wrapped in duct tape.
But you were diving on a line.
Yeah. Yeah, we did have the line at least.
What was it? Was it that carpet of Merc that stopped you? Which it's still I get to that.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
that might as well be bottom. It's time to turn around.
Yeah, it's like, yeah.
But usually, if you dive below the layer of muck, then it clears out and it's beautiful.
It depends where you dive.
It's really
I know, like when I dive in Northern Sound, I'm not giving you my dive spot. You get a layer of Merc on surface, you get down, I'm sorry, I use feet, I'm lame, 15 feet, and then it starts to open up as you get to bottom. But like, I go out to Nia Bay, there's places where you go down to 40 feet, you go down to 60 feet, it just gets thicker. It just sits down, it's just, like, you go down there, it's like...
Some like the cenotes, like some of the cenotes that are real kind of like smoky looking underwater.
I would, like... I don't know. I liken it to, sorry, nobody might get this reference. Super nerd here. Star Trek, the concept of fluidic space. You go down there, it's just purely just mass particles condensed. You're like, this is just a few more particles, and this is not going to be a solid matter. it's just thick, but you're still able to see it. You just can't see past it.
But I think that's part of the things that are interesting in there is that you can't control that. So if you've gone through the effort to get up and get dressed and go diving, and most places we've got to drive to a dive spot, right? So you're here. What I love about freediving is that you can drive to your freedive spot. It doesn't matter what the conditions are, as long as they're safe, you can go out and have a rad dive, right? Like if I can't see to Wendy, but I can sit here and stare, I might see the cutest, coolest little creature that maybe is kind of shy if it was really good visibility, but I've happened on sharks and other animals that I wouldn't have been able to see if it was really clear viz, because I got in the water on those days and dove when it was crap viz. Yeah. And it's kind of a mind game, like to just see, so what am I feeling right now? Like what comes up for me in this cloud, because our minds really put a lot of stuff in there. So like, am I in this moment right now, or am I in my head about something? Because it all kind of comes up in the water. So I enjoy that challenge in diving. I
do have to preface for anyone watching, these two free divers and spearos, I'm just purely spearo. I'm lame. So when I go down and I can't see anything, I'm like, I can't even see the fish. I'm gonna find another spot. But I've definitely been in situations where I think it was the one I talked about, where I was locked down by current, so we're anchored. Well, then it was just enjoy the dive, enjoy the scenery and everything. There's definitely it's still very enjoyable. But my first and foremost is, where's the fish? So,
but as a spearo, do you dive the same location all the time?
Not here in Washington for me. The particular dive I was thinking of, not naming the spot, but Sam knows it. We were diving up against a rock formation. We found shells. We found a 30-foot spot where you see the Merc layer, and then never really went past the 40-foot spot, because once I went into the Merc, I was like, okay, I can't see anything here. I'm gonna go back to the other spots where I was actually able to see things. So in situations like that, and this for spearfishing in general, really just that scenario, okay? Because it is about efficiency. Like Ben said, laziness is a great word for efficiency, because the amount of time you have in peak condition for diving is limited. So you kind of have to just factor in, I'm going to warm up here, I'm going to move to depth and work it as hard as I can in a safe manner, and then move back to a shallower spot now that I put so much time and effort in. And then what your goals are. Like we typically, whenever we go out, we're having a lot of friends and family over, so we're hoping to gather enough things to put on the table and enjoy ourselves with. And we do fine with, and even if we don't, we're not going to starve. We're well aware of that. But just efficiency-wise, if I hit a scenario or a location where there's not going to be anything happen here, but I still would like to get fish, so I'm going to go back to the spot where I had better visibility, work that zone, explore that area.
What's your timeline in the water? Like, what's a session for you in the summer versus like a session length? Because you're saying you got your warm up, your kind of deep part, and then your finish up. How long of a session, how much time do you have before you start to get cold? Is that your limiting factor?
Cold, and then, I'll be honest, nowadays, especially since like I don't do any exercises in preparation for spearfishing and diving like I used to, it becomes tiredness, and I can like feel it. So if we're diving in the sound for crab, we'll typically start off in like the 30-foot area, 25, 30-foot area. But it's worked out in zones. So if we have multiple people, the first person will drive up on the 30 to 40 area, the next person to go to the 40, 50 area, and so on and so forth. You just rotate the spots so there's time for the crabs to come back in. And, if the more productive area is deeper, work it after the warm-up period, but while I still have enough energy. And then once I've worked it enough and I'm actually, when you're kicking up, you're like, I'm starting to feel tired. I was like, okay, just go back to the shallow area, work that, and wrap it up for the day.
If you're starting to feel tired, is that your final deep dive, or will you try to do one more?
There is always that one more. And the thing is, I've been doing it long enough where I think I know what my body can do. And it is, I think, because outside of diving, I have been in a lot of dangerous vocations. And if there's anything I wanted to stress to people in regards to this sport and any others, is for every level of risk factor you add to your activity, just imagine it like a bingo box spinning. You added more numbers to it. So every risk factor that you're like, I can do this, I can do that, more chances for your number to get pulled. So I don't recommend it whatsoever. But there may be like one more dive, but I've there's plenty of times where I'm like, no, I'm feeling tired. I'm gonna go work the shallow area. We got enough. There's no reason to push it, and there isn't. It's not enjoyable coming up and feeling tired and like my legs cramping again. And
what about dehydration? Like I've found that I don't tend to get dehydrated as quickly like when I'm out here in the cold waters. Like when I go to like tropical waters and do like spearfishing things, like man, I really want to have like a water bottle on that buoy.
Don't you have a water bottle on the buoy?
Maybe like 20% of the time.
I always have a water bottle in the buoy.
So it's
with the electrolytes in it.
No, it's clutch because like prior to taking a freediving course in Hawaii, we would dive 4 hours straight, and by the end you're taxed, you're dehydrated, and it was after the dive class. Somehow I couldn't figure this out on my own, but they told me, hey, you should continue feeding and nourishing your body throughout the dive. I started to do that, and it was like, oh no, I'm actually feel like I get a second wind when I'm actually taking care of my body's needs as I dive. But I don't know that it likely transfers over to cold water too. I just haven't practiced it.
I see dehydration really a lot with students. I'll even send out a email like 5 days in advance because hydration doesn't start. I should get Wendy to talk about this. Hydration doesn't start like when you're thirsty, no. Right? It's not even like the day of waking up and deciding to drink a whole bunch of water the day of your dive is not going to get you hydrated for the dive. It started like the week before, and the food that you ate, and there's a lot of factors into it, but other than just suggesting that people drink enough water and maybe have some more fruit and things like that. But if you cramp, you generally are not hydrated, right? Or your fins are too stiff.
6 hours of spearfishing on Nia Bay will make my legs cramp.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of exercise.
Yeah. How are you in the water for 6 hours in Nia Bay?
In the summer, I can do it.
Amazing.
You're amazing. I'm 2 hours. I don't have to worry about my feet cramping. I can't feel them.
I find that, like, with cold water, the biggest factor for me is, like, if you get tense or shivering, then this is the time that you're most likely to get injured. Mm-hmm. And I play on like the really safe spectrum because I enjoy warm water diving much more than I enjoy cold water diving, that I don't push myself to stay out there. So one of the first conversations I'll always have with dive buddies is like, hey, I'm going to be able to stay in the water this amount of time. Because I don't want, like, if Ben's come out and he's expecting to stay 3 hours in the water and I know that I'm going to start shivering after 40 minutes, I want him to know up front that, like, that's the time of the dive session. Like, I'm not going to give myself hypothermia or give myself a squeeze because I'm shivering and, like, fully tense. So...
Yeah, and that's one thing I've actually really had to work on like the last few years is really paying attention to what my dive buddies are feeling. Because even though I might be willing to stay out like another 2 hours, it's like it's not cool at all to try to force your buddies to keep diving with you when they're like shivering. Come on, you can do one more. Just surface safe me. You'll be fine. Come on. That's not cool. You shouldn't do that to them.
And in regards to that here in Washington, in situations like if it's at Nia Bay at the jetty, something I've seen some of our guys do is they'll literally get out of the water, sit on the rocks in the sun. 20 minutes, they'll actually warm back up because it's significantly warmer than in the water at times, and then they'll get a little more time in, but at least even to do that before trying to do your swim back or even just get out the water, just to get your body to a happier place before doing anything else.
Yes, I've been one of the least sexiest mermaids on the rocks doing that.
It's my fingers and toes that get me the most.
Yeah.
Like, it's usually not my body, but I found open cell socks are really beneficial. Like, I got a pair of...
I love those.
Where were you getting that at?
Well, I got the most recent pair from Lighthouse, but yeah, I just look for open cell socks. The only downside to them is you gotta lube them up. So walking on an open cell sock is like walking in a skating rink. So you definitely want to cut your toenails for sure.
You should wear some sort of footwear. Definitely. I wear like Crocs whenever.
But even with the Crocs, like they slip around, right? You're slipping around. And so what I do now is I just wear my sandals down to the water with my warm water inside my open cell socks, so they're heating it up. And then as soon as I'm at the water, I just put my warm water socks right on, just as I'm walking in, and that's ideal. Not great if somebody accidentally was like, "What's this?" and pours the hot water out of the socks, which has happened to me a couple times. I'm like, crap, I gotta put these on in cold water, but...
Who's touching your socks?
So definitely don't try to walk on a jetty with open cell socks at all. Well, that's really dangerous.
This, I think, might be a little bit of the difference between spearfishers and freedivers, because you probably have your gun, your float, you have your full kit. Most of the time, people don't share their kits, right? Maybe your gun.
We'll buddy up on flags, but and then depending on guns, and because we enjoy the pole spear, one person will take one gun and a pole spear. But sometimes somebody's like, no, my gun needs a little more loving. I got to put some love into it. So they take out two guns. Yeah, mono. Yeah, bring up with your.
A couple of my buddies are nice enough to let me use their gun, but most people are like, no, you're gonna shoot a rock and dent the tip. Get away from here.
But for line diving, typically we're carrying the gear down together. So even if someone's diving my setup, one person's carrying the weight, maybe a couple people are carrying the float. Yeah. People, like a lot of people have things in the float, so it could have been...
No, that makes sense.
Can I put this thing in your float? And you have this thing that's got water in it because I've got my socks in my float carrying it down. Just something like that.
Side note, as Ben said, part of your spearfishing gear, especially for you newer folks and people diving with newer folks, is a file. And you know what that's for. It's to fix some tips.
I think I need a grinder to fix my tip.
When it's that bad, you actually have to use the file to cut the tip off and then make a new tip. We've had to do that before.
Because when you go to aim at something and it misses and you hit the rock and then you break your tip?
Well, one, if, say this potted plat was a fish and this fireplace was a rock behind it, don't shoot at that fish. Wait till the fish wanders. If you watch my videos, I stress that and I give some great examples.
What's the channel name?
I forget. Go to Jana's channel. I'll have a link there. Go to Ben's channel. I'll have a link there. Just come check me out. Just come check me out. You kind of actually take your gun and you kind of make the fish know, like, hey, this is not a safe zone. Like, literally, so you get within so much distance of a fish, it's going to move. So you can corral a fish away from a rock. You can corral a fish to try to line up a double shot. Damn, I should have said that. But yeah, just don't shoot at anything that's got a rock behind it, unless it's a primo prize fish and that's your only shot.
I'll definitely, I want to say about the purpose for me, like why I like to participate in this stuff, and just, I don't know, maybe I already said it, because I am tired too.
No.
Just about how a lot of what comes out in freediving is talking about like blackouts and the extreme of things, and I don't think that that's really what freediving is. And so part of us being on camera and recording this is to show that there are other, more enjoyable, it's a very chill sport, it's very accessible, and so it's like stuff like that.
I feel like for me, spearfishing has been just such a journey because like it's such a part of the culture in Hawaii of just like kids will go out, like you're talking like 7-year-olds and his older cousin who's 9 years old with 3 prongs and mask and hop in the water and go diving. Like it's just part of the culture where it's like, would you just let your kid hop in the water and go hold their breath and mess around with fish and sharks and eels? From that to eventually doing lessons, solo diving Louisiana for a number of years, and just like knowing the safety factors but kind of ignoring it and the reasons behind it, and then the reasons later for why like what psychological change you need to recognize and make to realize it's not worth it, and that there's actually a lot more enjoyable ways to enjoy it. I know it might not apply to the free diving side, but I think
it totally does, and I really wish like we'd filmed. Or was that filmed? Yes.
I saw the red light.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought we were taking a break.
It's a trap.
I think it's really interesting, and I'd like to hear you expand. Well, because I said the thing, I didn't know that you were filming, so I was like, oh, I want to talk about this thing, but at a really high level. You talked about diving alone, and then you talked about working diving alone, and then so you talked about like all of this bed, and I think one of the most important things for us to discuss, and I'd like to do like our next topic on why we don't freedive alone.
Yeah.
As like a whole, that's a whole discussion in itself. And so maybe that's even, we save it for the next talk into that, because that's really big into it, but it is applicable in freediving as well.
I feel like, sorry, jump on just a bit, because I feel like I said, I do fall into that, don't do that spectrum. Even like Sam was cracking up because in our group, nowadays, I am like captain safety. Well, I'll be the one in the most dangerous position, but I'm captain safety. I don't want them to take, we always talk about all the risk and everything beforehand. But like exploring that transition, because we've actually met other divers at these get-togethers that I could see myself in. Like I understand why you're out there pushing. I understand why you're doing those things we're telling you not to do and telling you it's not worth it. So yeah, just want to make sure we hit especially the more at-risk targets.
Yeah, I do remember from that potluck a couple of those stories some people are telling, and it's yeah.
And they were newer to it, so it's like it's just beginning of their journey, and
exactly.
we don't want it to be their end.
That was another one I wanted to bring up, is like what the main causes for incidences are at each stage of like the freediving journey. Like when you're in the beginning, like most incidents I've seen is usually from being too tense, like you're really anxious and tightening up in it, and then that tension can often cause like a barotrauma or something. And then technique, like I've seen like a couple like ruptured eardrums from not having the equalization technique, and they just keep pushing. Like sometimes I don't even think they realize that they are pushing, they're just not aware of their bodies. And then
they're not getting a full equalization because they're wearing gloves? and they're wearing and they have a mask, and so they think that they're holding their nose, but really they're not, and all their air is coming out, and they're buddied with people that don't see it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so there's that side of the technique, and there's the other side where they're just using too much or they're just using like too much energy, and so they burn through their oxygen, and then like sometimes like blackouts will happen at really shallow depths just from that burning too much energy.
I wonder too if they blow in your eardrums, if they feel like, you know, I've tried it 3 times and I just can't get it to clear. I'm just gonna keep pushing it, and like it'll clear until it pops.
I think it's hard to take in all of the information. Like, even when people take a course and they're told something repetitively, that you don't always hear it. It's not even like this is a specific freediving thing. Like, you just don't always hear the information until one day you do. So
sometimes it has to marinate for a while.
Yeah, it would. I think it depends on the background that you come to, and I think sometimes people get confused because they'll feel an equalization on one side, but not the other. And they'll be like, okay, cool, well, I got it on one side. Maybe if I keep going, then it'll clear the other side. Like, maybe there's not enough pressure built up on this side. So I'll just go down until I feel, and then, you know, so half their face is just feeling like somebody's squeezing it like an orange, and then they blow really hard, and then it feels good because they finally relieved the pressure. So it's an interesting one, and it's delicate, and I think it also goes down to not everybody has awareness of their bodies. Like, generally in our culture, we're not taught to feel. Like, we're not taught to be present in our bodies. We're taught to, you know, stiff upper lip and, you know, deal with your feelings later, and, you know, like, we don't think it's changing culturally. But when I went to school, I never had anger boundaries and safety as like a class that was taken. I wasn't taught to like think about what I was feeling in my body. I mean, I had a little more self-awareness because I was a dancer than, you know, somebody else that maybe played like football. But even as a dancer, I think I was set up to like, there was always a part of my body that hurt. I was on point shoes all the time, so my feet bled every night, and that was just, there was always something that was sort of pulled and sort of sore. And so in freediving, it's different because what I did yesterday does not mean that's what I can do today. And that is that very humbling experience that I have to just really be in today's body. Maybe the air conditioning was on, maybe I'm mucousy today, maybe I didn't get enough sleep, maybe I'm not hydrated, maybe I shouldn't have drank 4 cups of coffee before I went on my dive.
Why not?
No, that feeds back into, as you mentioned before, like, just because you're having issues with depth, would you say depth in this one, or tired? Even me, who's just I want to catch food, just fish nut over here. That's the perfect time to go swim in the shallows, just enjoy the view and just take it in. A lot of times, actually, especially we have a 3-person rotation, or if we're diving on pylons, that's actually the part I enjoy. My breathe up time is I'm pulling a muscle down, I'm tearing it apart, and I'm feeding the little crab over there, just taking it in. It's still very enjoyable.
Under the sea.
Yeah. And then it is hilarious too, because like you pick up a crab from the bottom, right? But it didn't make length, so you're gonna release it. And this thing got just picked up by a thing 100 times its size. It's losing its mind, and then you put a mussel in front of it, and it lashes out, grabs it, and just starts eating it. It just cracks me up every time. But
have you ever dropped one and then have it swim around and try to bite you from behind or pinch you from behind?
No, they just run from me.
Oh, they like to attack me, so I guess I'm not scary enough. I've actually had them like swim with their little legs like this, swim all the way behind me, and then try to pinch me through the wetsuit.
What kind of crab?
Red rock. They're meaner than the dungeons.
Oh no, yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. Oh yeah. Yeah. But as Jana was saying, like, even if you're not, as I said, you're tired, you can't hit bottom, you're just gonna clear, explore. feel your body, get to know yourself. Because like we were diving this last trip in Baja, I was sick the entire time. That partner's gonna attest to it. I had the sniffles.
That's why I was able to keep up.
I was sick, but I knew my body enough to know my limitations to be able to dive. And literally, there was times where we're in the rotation. 2 attempts. I can't dive. Continue rotation without me. I'm on safety right now. Try it again, and I would get it after. And I'm not forcing it. I'm not forcing it whatsoever. You can actually, at least for me, I can like kind of reset my ears on surface. Pay really good attention to when you begin your equalizing on the dive to help support that. But there's never a need to. I don't know that you can't even force an equalization. Don't try that. That's not the way to do it.
And if you keep like pushing it, whatnot, and like trying to force them on it usually causes inflammation, like either in your ears or your sinuses, and that's just gonna make things swell up, and it's gonna take even longer before you can recover and dive again.
Yeah, equalizing a lot on the surface, great, until you've irritated your ear, and then you need to stop equalizing. Like people who are like, oh, I sort of didn't, I my ear hurts a little bit, and they're just trying to equalize on the surface, like, I actually think with the rotation, part of the problem comes in that people are comparing themselves. So if the 3 of us are diving in rotation and I say, okay, I'm going to be down for 30 seconds to 45 seconds max, and you go down, you're like, well, I'm going to be down between 1:30 and 2 minutes, and Ben goes down, he's like, oh, I'm going to do like 2:30 hang, 2:45 like max. And so I'm not going to have a problem with that, but maybe somebody else would be like, well, these other divers are going twice the time as me. I should be different. Like something's wrong with me, right? And staying
None of
just...
us care, by the way.
well, the reason why we have to know how long each other's dive is for safety, right? Mm-hmm. Like that is purely a safety thing. Like you need to tell me how long you're going to dive so that I can properly safety you. But I think people go into that comparison thing, like it's that groupthink that happens. So we're all diving. You've come out on a free dive with us. We drop the plate to 30 meters or 100 feet, but you're not feeling it today. So if I want to make you most comfortable, I'll pull up the plate in between your dive so that you can hit your depth. But a lot of times people don't want to like ask, oh, I want you to pull up the plate. And so it's fine. We'll just keep it there. And then that not knowing where the bottom is, like not knowing where the end is, then they can get that tense, that fear, and injury can come from that because they're tense, like this is deeper, but I'll just turn around before I get uncomfortable. But turning around once you get tense is like really bad. Like you should not ever be tense. You shouldn't stop yourself because suddenly you're tense and then turn around and come up. Like that's how people get injured.
That's a good point to stress, especially like if there's an open line, is you don't want to dive until you feel uncomfortable, because a lot of times that's already too late by the time you reach that point. So you want to go by the depth that you're good at, and then make sure you don't go more than, depending on what the depth is, like 1 or 2 meters deeper than that at a time.
Well, so here's the thing that I'm going to kind of be devil's advocate here. Like, you don't know what depth you're good at just because you've done it before. And there's, like, in competitive rules, right, if you go to sign up to a depth competition, they'll ask you what your personal best is in this discipline in the last 3 months. So that is varied from water temperature and everything within that. And like knowing, like a lot of times when we're out line diving, there'll be a bunch of people. And so we generally ask like what depth you want to dive, and we try to buddy people like with similar depths. So that you have that nice experience. Like I've known deep divers who've squeezed on a much earlier depth because they were trying to, do 20 meter pull downs on a 40 meter line, and they ended up going too deep. And then, there's a lot of stuff going on. So the less things that there is to worry about, and then just being human, like comparing ourselves to others. Like it's really important to just stay doing what you're doing at your pace and like find that joy, find that love of that. Like it's not always about, oh, I need to push this depth deeper, or I need to hold my breath longer, or I need to swim further distance. Like why? Like, are you enjoying what you're doing? Are you enjoying the life that you're having? Like just being able to get out, sometimes just being able to get out and go for a snorkel is like, that's a win, right? And so it doesn't have to be anything more than that, you know?
I think it's great to acknowledge just psychologically the mindset you'll have throughout your dive career, because I've absolutely been guilty of that. I've been blessed to have been able to spearfish with some really great spearos. And I still vividly remember the time me and my regular dive partner, we dove with another guy. And luckily this is Hawaii where you have beautiful visibility. It's maybe like 20, 25 feet down so we can see everything going on. And he sits there for 2.5 minutes. You watch him watch the school in the distance. You watch, like, it looks like watching on TV. You're down there with him. You're watching the school come in. You see the fish he wants. See him dust for it. See him lining up and everything. And you're like, God damn, it's 2.5 minutes already. He's got it, huh? And then, sure enough, guilty. I'm like, I would like to try that. I would like to see if I can get in that zone. Luckily for me, I had the amount of maturity and self-confidence and comfort with my dive partner, who I think at that point we diving 2 to 3 years together. So, and I'll talk about that another time. Just that was actually some of the best years of my diving, where you're growing with your dive partner. But in a safe manner, I said, hey, I want to actually push bottom time a little on this one. But push for me doesn't mean go down there and like fight the contractions. It means I'm going to breathe up nicely. I'm going to really calm myself down. I'm going to go down there. I'm going to try to get into like just the calm zone and everything. And I killed it. I succeeded on it so well that 2 great fish were swimming in front of me, but I was so much in my zen zone that I forgot I was down there to shoot fish. And my partners were like, when I came to, they're like, what were you doing? I was really in the zone. It's like, yeah, we could tell. Like the fish were just swimming around you. So yeah, that was fine. But I didn't go back to like, oh, I want to beat that time or anything. It's just like, no, it's nice to know that I can feel at peace with my body, and there just feeling that zen zone was enough for me. And same thing with depth. It's not so much like, oh, I hit this depth. The only reason for me spearfishing, I hit this depth means anything to me is like I got the fish I wanted down there. But it's when I hit that zen zone, I'm free falling, and it's just my body's in motion with the ocean. I didn't mean the rhyme. Like that's the feeling I like to chase when I see somebody who is doing significantly better than me. I'm like, I want to feel my happy place and try that out too, and communicate with my partners and still stay within bounds of what I know I'm capable of.
So this amazing spearo that you were diving with that had a 2.5 minute bottom time, was he staring at his watch?
No.
Right? Like, it's, a lot of times people are like, oh, I want to get a bottom time, or it cracks me up when somebody will come to the surface and look at their computer. They haven't even taken a breath in, and they're looking at how much time they were on the bottom, and so it's a really good story because you were playing with that extension, right, of the time, and you saw somebody who didn't jump at the first opportunity to shoot a fish, is kind of how I heard your story. But he was there and very much in the zone and really had the school of fish come by and was able to pick the fish that he wanted to shoot, right?
And know that that's who he was there for. Yeah.
Right.
I'm noticing a difference too is like if you're spearing or have like a goal with a partner or two, that keeps you collaborative instead of like in that competition mode. Because like every time we do the 3 people thing, it's like, oh, I just saw something down there. It was this spot. Go down and get it. I'll like, and then they take over the either the watching, the safetying, or like helping keep things organized. But so it's like it's interesting to see like as freedivers, you guys like that could potentially be a thing where it's like, oh, depth is like the fish. And for us, it's like, the fish is the fish.
No, it's like I was mentioning earlier, like, my transitions, like, my experiences throughout life. Like I said, I dove Louisiana solo. I caught my biggest fish ever my deepest fish ever, all that, all by myself. But on reflection, especially after I came to Washington, I was like, but my most memorable, enjoyable times of spearfishing was with my dive partners as we're growing together, as we're exploring new spots together.
You gotta have that cheerleader squad that goes like, yeah, look at that fish you got.
No, that was great too. And like we do that, like any one of us, like it was different because even like, well, Louisiana, I didn't have a choice but to dive by myself. My only other dive partner was scuba divers, so that was a thing.
Oh, I disagree with that.
What do you mean?
Well, you could have trained somebody.
Well, I was a little jaded from that because I did that several times in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking. You put that much time and effort to get somebody to your level so you can grow together. And then they give up the sport.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. It happens. But it's one of those things, and it kind of goes back to that topic of, like, you know, never dive alone. I mean, for me, 25-meter swim in the pool, very, very easy. I will never swim 25 meters in the pool alone. Not because I can't, not because I'm worried about it, but because I'm a human being and I might have a brain aneurysm, and then, you know, there's that if I have a buddy on the surface, so I will definitely go through that. But I think the point that you're making is, like, yes, it's great to have that community, and the point that Sam was making with divers getting into the sport, like, when you start, there's this huge mountain of gains in the beginning where you don't know where the limits are, and it just becomes like so easy, and so you're like, oh, that, you know, this felt so good, so I'm gonna go to the next one. And you know, people dive for different reasons. Like, sometimes people dive because of the feeling that they get. Some people in deep diving, they love the free fall, right? Some people love the community, or, you know, whatever that is, but it's incremental too. So once you should dive within your trained limit is what I recommend. So if you've taken a course where you learned how to dive to 20 meters, like, max out at 20 meters. Like, don't try to go deeper than that. There's physiological things that happen different into 30 and then into 40. And then once you get past the 40 meter mark, then you're into a whole different ball game. And that, you know, doing a 40 meter dive here, so maybe the next time, if 40 was absolutely flawless and perfect, sure, try 40 again. If 40 was great, but maybe you weren't exactly perfect, maybe try 39, right? But, you know, do 40 3 to 5 times before you try doing 41, and, like, incrementally, maybe 42. That's like a really nice slow progression, so it feels confident and steady, but there shouldn't be any kind of nervousness around it, in my opinion.
All right. It's getting late. Wrap-ups. The last thoughts?
We have some thoughts.
That's like a really solid wrap.
Well, there it is, and more for next time.
That's it?
That's the wrap-up.
We're done.
That was the wrap-up. Now we play the music. Sam will get on some tin cans and make this an exit soundtrack. Good job, Sam.